today?
Man, I'm good, dude. How you doing today? Like,
It's another rainy day here in Philadelphia. It's been that way for the last week, and it's starting to weigh on me a bit. But how about you?
it's sunny. We kind of had a cold snap a couple weeks ago in Colorado, and I'm actually south of Denver in the metro area, and man, the past few days has been 70 and sunny. So that's why
Oh
I'm all
wow!
red. That's why I'm red faced because I've been out walking dogs and like the the winter lack of vitamin D and sunshine is just it's taking its toll. So
In
like I'm there.
Pennsylvania, sorry, go on.
No, you're good. Yeah, so no, it's good stuff, man.
Yeah,
Where
in
you at in
Pennsylvania,
Philly?
we just outside of Philadelphia in a suburb called Elkins Park. And we
Okay.
always get these notorious fake out springs where it's 60, 70 for a few days and then it just goes right back to miserable until May.
I was in Philly for about a year and some change. I lived there around so like 2015, 2016. I lived in I think Newcastle, Delaware for just a little bit. I worked at PHL for American.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I lived in Prospect Park like the last 6 months of it, you know. So like yeah, like Philly's a great town. I like Philly. So
So you moved around a fair bit. I remember yesterday you mentioning that you were in Texas, I think.
yeah, I was actually born in Texas.
Okay.
So I was born in Victoria, and then my dad, who was in the National Weather Service, he moved us up to Point Barrow, Alaska, because he managed the weather station there. And then my sister was born in Virginia, because we moved to DC when he moved up in the government. And then I grew up in Kailo, Hawaii when I was about from 6 to
Oh, wow.
11. Back to Texas. Oh yeah, Kat. Yep. I'm from Victoria. I was there for like a year until I was like a year, just a little over a year old. And then yeah, we lived on Oahu, and I then moved back to Texas into like I lived in Hearst and then Joshua. So that was a while ago. I was born in 77. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm 48. And then I lived in East Tennessee for God, like 20 plus years, like in Johnson City, Kingsport. And then I was originally going to go to DC. I was going to be a security analyst with the Department of the Navy in 2012. But then John Boehner got in and they did sequestration, which is basically where they froze all the government jobs. And at the time, I had gone back to working for Piedmont Airlines, was part of U.S. Airways.
Mhm.
And then I was in East Tennessee. I was throwing bags. I was kind of living the life and just I hadn't finished my thesis yet, so I'm just literally just being like a bohemian country boy, right? And my buddy's like, "Why don't you move up to Chantilly, Virginia?" And I said, "And then you could still look for jobs." I said, "Yeah, I love DC. I had a circle of friends up there, so I moved up there." So
So
I
you've
I
lived in
got
quite
it.
a few states now.
Yeah, so I got $1 an hour raise. So this is 2013, and my bills doubled and a half again from what I was at from East Tennessee. And so like I went from being like I'm doing pretty good, all the hours I could work, to like just being broke. And then I got into management and I moved to Phil. So I worked at DCA, and then Reagan International Airport. So everybody just locals call it Washington National.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to call it Reagan, like the word because like no. And then I took a job at Mainline, moved to Philly, and then after I worked there for about a year and some change, I transferred to Detroit. Then I transferred to Los Angeles, and I went into entertainment, which was just all kinds of horrifying and being broke again. Went back to aviation for a stint, and then the pandemic hit, and my sister was starting to have health issues, and then my mother was starting to have health issues, so I ended up moving back to the Denver area, and so now I'm in Denver, and I thought my time in entertainment was over, but no, the pandemic actually kind of helped me get into the digital space, and I worked for digital creators for a while, and then I came back around to kind of straddle the digital and the traditional side,
Yeah.
and now I'm on Substack. Just oh yeah, Denver, yeah. What's up, Baz? No, but like yeah, it's funny because my grandfather was a huge Broncos fan. So like, and then
Yeah.
Peyton Manning playing at UT, and then like everybody in East Tennessee or Tennessee like the Colts. I like Peyton, but I didn't like the Colts. And then Peyton came to the Broncos, and I'm like, oh, well now I've got a double reason to like the Broncos. But being in Philly, I ended up adopting the Eagles as my NFC team. So I love the Eagles. Yeah.
You know,
So
it's
it's
it's it's funny. I wish I could say that I was a big Eagles fan myself, but I've never been a huge sports follower, and I'm
no.
sad. I'm sad about it sometimes because it would have been a lot of fun to really appreciate the revelry of the Super Bowl victories when they happened. But the last sports season that I really followed and appreciated was the World Series 2008 when
Okay.
the yeah, when the Phillies made it, and that was a blast for me. But my sports involvement since then has mostly just been as an active participant. I've never been too much of a on TV sports watcher,
I
and I
lo-
was.
Go
And
ahead.
I was born in '96, so I've spent most of my life in the Philadelphia area and don't have quite nearly the fascinating history of moving around that you do. But I do like it here. It's for 6 months of the year, I could hardly be happier here. But never been a huge winter proponent. I'm pretty happy slinking away to somewhere tropical when I can manage. I just got back from a fun trip to Costa Rica for a month.
Oh wow, I've never been to Costa Rica. I've traveled. It's funny. I never really got a chance to run around South America when I was when AA. I went to a lot of places in Europe, Australia, Japan. And like where like yeah, I like Japan is the only spot I've been to in Asia technically. And so yeah, Australia, but I've been to Amsterdam, Italy, so Rome and Naples. Yeah, Naples. And then Munich and Prague, been there. London, Paris. I think that's it. Yeah, I did a lot of European. Well, because Philly is like there's a lot of directs to you could do direct flights from Philly all over to Europe, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a
But
great
like
airport that
if
we
you go to
have.
South America, you'd have to go to Miami.
Yep,
So
yep.
like you could get a you like I never did get to take the Puerto Rico trip though. So I always wanted to do the Puerto Rico flight, but I never but getting a Puerto Rico flight in Philly because I flew non-rev was always full. So like it was really really hard to get a flight to Puerto Rico to PR. So, but definitely gonna go one day. I got a buddy of mine that I write with. He lives in Philly, and his wife's Puerto Rican, so they go like she's got family down there. They go all the time. So it's good stuff, man. You
It's
know,
ironic. I've been to Central America a couple of times, 4 or 5 times now, actually, and I've been to the Middle East, but I have yet to go to Europe, actually.
wow, Middle East. I've never been to the Middle East, not yet. Um, you know, I definitely want to go. I'd like to check out like Kuwait and I kind of don't want to go to Dubai. Just like I'm like no, it just something about it just seems like I don't know, it's a little unnatural.
I'm
Like
very thankful that I went when I went because it was right before this recent hellstorm in Israel broke out. It was on a
yeah,
birthright trip, and for all those who aren't familiar with that, it's basically this all expenses paid trip that people with Jewish descent get before they turn 26 or 27, and yeah, I went in 2022 or so, and it was only 6 or 7 months later that things really started to devolve there, and would not have
mm,
had a chance to do that same trip if I had tried to today.
nice. I my
Mm.
mom went. When did she go? I want to say it was 2017. She went with a friend of hers, and they wanted like her friend always wanted to go to Jerusalem, so they did that whole thing. I've never been to Israel. I've never really been. I don't think I've been anywhere over there. I the Yeah, I wanted to go to I was scheduled to, like, to go to Greece when I was at Philly. There was an Athens flight I was gonna hop on, but things came
Yeah,
up last minute and I had to cut it. I couldn't
yeah.
go. So, now I don't get travel benefits. I have to, like, I gotta pay money for to fly? Man, this is terrible. Like, what? You know? Yeah, I'd love to see Jordan, Janine, for sure, 100%. Um,
I was
but
on
yeah,
the
go
Jordan
ahead.
River for an afternoon, and briefly set foot in the country, but I cannot say that I did a proper Jordan trip.
Oh, yeah, no, like,
Yeah,
I haven't been to that side of the world. I haven't been to the Middle East. Wanna go. Um, like, someday, now I'm hoping to, like, pay for it with, like, a film. Like, I'm looking for
yeah,
tax credits. It's like,
yeah,
I was talking to my, business partner yesterday, and we were looking at Japan because Japan's offering tax credits now, so we're like she's like, "Well, we could go to Osaka." I was like, "Yes, yes to Osaka." I've been to Tokyo and Kamakura, but I haven't been to Kyoto. But I want to go to. My buddy actually lives. I went to college with. He teaches English there, so which is
Oh wow,
funny. Yeah, because he wanted to. We took Japanese together. Like, I met him in Japanese. I took it in college, and he wanted to be a mechanic. He wanted to work on drift cars. So
yeah.
he wanted to go over to Japan, but he ended how he got over there was teaching English, and he ended up sticking with teaching English. So that's what he does now instead of work on drift cars. So yeah, man. So how's the week treating you, man?
It's a crazy time politically. I've been watching the little that I have invested in the stock market perform yo-yos. um,
Yeah, today it looked like it was just like a heart monitor, you know?
but I'm very good at staying distracted. I think a lot of the reason that I write about so many things that aren't politics are just because it keeps me sane. I think that if I spend each day covering this shit storm, that it's can really keep me mired in it, and it's nice sometimes to just slink away to happy video game worlds and fun TV shows and not think
Oh
about it
yeah.
all.
No, dude, you have to, man. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, you can't like, and I talked about this last night, and this is just, a lot of times like, oh, you write about politics, or you know, but that's not who like we are as a person, And I
yeah,
think as a creative or a writer, you should write about basically all like any facet of yourself. So I do poetry or mental health or you know uh men's issues, that kind of stuff, or just really in politics, women's issues, but mostly just from sort of like the men perspective. I typically don't. I try to stay away from telling women how they should be or what they should do or what
yeah.
they're going through. They pretty much know what they're going through, right? So
Mm.
yeah, I don't need to tell them. I'm not here. I'm not here for that. So
I, I,
yeah.
some-
Well,
I sometimes feel a little bit cornered into covering politics so much. A, because it is very important. I can never downplay that. There are times when I'm writing an entertainment piece and I wonder, what's the point? Does this Walking Dead review really matter when the country's going through this? And then there are other times where I feel like, oh, this distraction is helpful for other people in the same way that it is for me. And
yeah, you have to do that stuff, man.
yeah,
Like, I mean, it it's the one thing that keeps you sane because the folks that are doing this to us, or it's going to be relentless, and they have a
yeah,
megaphone that we have. It's just I was talking to a buddy of mine today, and we were talking about 9/11, right? So you would have been real young with that. Maybe what you were born 96, so you'd have been 5.
it's actually one of the first memories that I have. Interestingly enough,
Wow.
but I'll go off about that in a second. What were you about to say?
Wow. So
Yeah,
the thing was like part of we were discussing like that's kind of part of where we started to lose our minds as a nation. And I think part of that was the propaganda that came out with that.
mhm,
Because instead of when, like, say, Pearl Harbor in 1941, there was this mass mobilization for us to, and
yeah,
so and then there was ration cards. There was this notion of shared sacrifice across
mhm,
society. And so when it ended, and, there was a definitive end, like, we were it affected us, but we were able to kind of move beyond it. And with 9/11, it was you had this propaganda like what we have now, where it was really just kind of beginning.
Yeah.
And like we had so you had like this the Bush administration saying, "Hey, go out and shop. Go out and consume and spend money. That's your patriotic duty." And then you go over to Fox News and you had, those talking heads saying the terrorists want to kill you, every and the threat levels where they had the orange, red, and this and that. So you had this like push and pull, pretty much gaslighting, where it was, hey, everything's normal, everything's fine. Go and spend money, go and do this, go and do that. And then it's, oh my God, be afraid all the time. Oh dear God, you're gonna die from all the terrorists. Like,
Yeah.
wow, there's anthrax in the drinking water and that kind of stuff. And it's no wonder that we're all kind of just, like there's part of us are just, you know, kind of just, ah, from that.
It's very interesting for me to look back on 9/11 because as a kid, I actually do remember it pretty distinctly. I was still in preschool when it happened, and I remember seeing all of the adults react to it on the TV, and my feeling at the time was, "What's everybody so sad about? Isn't this the kind of thing that you guys always watch on the news? Bunch of chaos in the Middle East and fires and explosions. What's different here? Why is everybody so upset?"
Mm,
And then 5 years go by and I start to understand that, okay, this was an event that really, really changed not just America, but yeah, the older I've gotten, the more that I've started to understand that that shaped the entire world in a way. And same with COVID. I saw somebody say in the chat that COVID was an event that just changed everything. And man, yeah, I couldn't
yeah.
agree more. It was a world before COVID and a world after it. And
It's
oof,
definitely, yeah, it's an inflection point. It's interesting because I was in college at that time. And I kind of went off and on to college for a long time. I graduated way late, where it's like I'd do a year and then go work for a few years, and then I'd do another year, and then I'd go work for a few years, and then I'd do a semester and that kind of thing. I kind of was in and out. And I was in college at that time, and I was actually on my way to school to my history of Islam class. And I remember uh like I left the house and my wife, we were living in like a one bedroom apartment, and I was taking off, and she said, "Hey, there's a fire at like the World Trade Tower." I was like, "Oh." And they're like, she said, "I think a plane crashed into it." And I think I thought it was like a Cessna or just like a pilot plane. And by the time I got like I lived in Kingsport, my college is in Johnson City, so it was about like 25 miles away. So by the time I got about 5 miles from campus, that's when over the radio, the second tower news like they interrupted,
yeah,
I had an old car and I just listened to the radio, and they interrupted the broadcast to say the second tower had been hit. And I got to school and everybody was freaking out, right? And we went to class, and then so like it was just like we our my professor, I think she was Iranian, and so like she asked to be escorted off campus, like to
yeah,
have campus police escort her.
yeah.
And we they ended up canceling school when we went home, and my wife was glued to the TV at the time. And so, and our neighbor came downstairs and she was freaking out. And she was very much a Bible beater, right? And so we had to calm her down to be like, she was like, "It's the end times. He's coming." She like knocked on the doors, like she wanted to make sure we were saved because the Lord was coming any minute. And
Yeah.
so we had to be like, "We're good." I was like, "Are you okay?" Like she's like, and she was having a meltdown. It was kind of surreal to kind of, it was a very surreal day, you know. Um,
The
I'm
world just
curious, like,
gets
so
crazier and crazier. One thing that I'm a bit sympathetic with the religious zealots in our country on is the idea that these might just well be the end times. I'm not feeling the most optimistic about the future of humanity, but we will see. What were we about to say?
I no 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 I the thing is, like, as a student of history, it's ironic because it actually does make me sort of feel. optimistic in the sense of like we've always had this in humanity. We've like I think like what was it the worst recorded year? I think it was like 478, and there was a massive super volcano like exploded, and worldwide there was darkness because of the ash for like I think it was a couple years. Crops died, there
Yeah.
was famine, you had maize. And I because I was thinking, I was like, when they said what was the worst year, like this is what historians agree on, and I was thinking it's got to be like the Black Plague, like it's got to be there, or it's got to be like maybe
Mm.
World War II, somewhere in there, right? Because I'm trying to stack up like the tens of millions of deaths, like where is it at? No, it's like 478. Like I was like, hope like where that was almost for humanity and as a species on the planet an extinction level event. Like we were that close.
I
Yeah.
remember this post that went viral around the beginning of the pandemic that just tried to contextualize the chaos a bit, and it just said basically, so if you were born in 1900, these are the events you lived through. You saw World War One and World War Two and the pandemic and this and this and this and this. So yeah, it's true. The if there's one thing you can count on in this world, it's perpetual chaos.
But absolutely, but it's still it's kind of like, you know, you may read about somebody's worst day maybe 100 years ago, and you're like, my God, I'm so, because this is where perspective is super super important. You may think, man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. However, but then you're living in you live in your life, and you spill coffee on your shirt, and your breakfast isn't that great, and then you got to go, you got to run an errand, and you got to wait in line, and then you got to, your card gets declined for whatever reason, and it's because of identity theft, and then you get the promotion you were hoping to get, you don't get that day. You finally find out, and you're just like, my life is the worst of anyone I know, and for you, yeah, that's how you're feeling that day, you know. But the reason I kind of try to like keep things in perspective is it's been, as not only a country but as a species, it's been terrible before, but it's also been good too, but that doesn't mean much to say someone who is getting the dirty stick of it at the point, who's really going through it. They might look at me for saying that and going like, bro,
Yeah.
no. And so that's where, if you can give those folks some empathy, I think that's where, like, that's what you got to try to do.
Yeah, during the
um
pandemic, I was able to recontextualize it right from the beginning and feel like, think about how different the world is right now during how it was during the last pandemic. And we've got cell phones and the ability to FaceTime and do Zoom calls, and we can stream a million billion things on the TV. And, all things considered, it could be worse. And like you were saying, though, I've got to acknowledge that there's a certain privilege in saying that because I am one of the people who didn't lose family members to the pandemic, and many did.
yeah, yeah, and I
Was
mean, or lose
was
your
there?
livelihood. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It was a very helpful time period for me in life personally. The lockdown was just so useful in reprioritizing myself and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And there were so many people I knew who it was a total disaster for. But there are a few people I know who've experienced similar, where it was just a useful pause where you could sit back and just think about where you were in life, what you wanted to do, da da da. And yeah, I'm not honestly sure that I would write today if it weren't for the pandemic. Truthfully,
Yeah, and sometimes that comes out of like, um those kind of bad situations. I mean, I could, there was opportunities I never got, or like things I passed over, or maybe decisions I made that I could have gone another way, that I would be a different person now if I had made different decisions. And at the time, what I thought was, oh, I'm getting my butt kicked, or I got, man, I failed. It pushed me in a direction that I'd never even considered. So it's interesting you say that. I was curious, like, with the Gen Z report. and kind of our age differences, like where I'm at and where you're at, like for like your peers and for Gen Z, like what are kind of the big things that you guys are like that you're focused on? Because I know a lot of it's just I hear like from the corporate media and all that other stuff is like, well, this is what they're focused on and da da da. And I had interactions with Gen Z somewhat when like or younger millennials when I was in management, but it was very much management to employee, and I
Yeah.
saw what the younger guys were going through. So like what are some of the things you guys are like that's your concern right now?
I think a lot about this Noam Chomsky quote, where he just lamented how few people understand politics on a level that goes beyond professional sports. You go to the gym and people can talk about all the stats of all the players and this and that, this play, da da da. And it disappoints me so much of the time how little literacy people have for politics. I find that so many Gen Z voters are single issue and don't remember yesterday and just think about the economy today. And it's bizarre to me that I know people who went through the chaos of 2020 and all of the Trump administration and were able to look at the price of eggs and gas in 2024 and change their vote. I've really had to disconnect from a couple of those people. It's bizarre to me that I know people who endorsed what we're now going through.
Here's the interesting part is like that's pretty consistent across all age groups. So my age group, which is I'm Gen X, so
Yeah.
I'm like later Gen X, and they like Gen X males swung the heaviest. White Gen X males, both college educated and non college educated, swung heavily for Trump. And yeah, and it's kind of like that. It's like the baby boomers. There was this misconception that every single baby boomer went to Woodstock,
Yeah.
and every single baby boomer was a hippie and dropped acid on Haight Ashbury in San Francisco and followed the Grateful Dead. And
That
that
was
was
just
really
my
just
parents.
right. Yeah. So that was very small percentage of the baby boomer generation. It wasn't a lot of them. So, and my generation, you think is like, oh, well, we're grunge rock and Nirvana, and we rebelled against sort of the '80s and the Reaganites, and we're more of like the very pragmatic sort of, you know, politically astute generation. And no, we're
I,
not.
sh-
We're just like every other generation. You
I
know.
should pause for a minute and say some hellos to some people I see in the chat. I just saw
Yeah.
Robin pop in, saw Murphy a few minutes ago, saw Boz, and yeah, thank you everybody for being here. I'm always so terrible at trying to figure out how to keep a conversation going while being courteous to all the people coming in. So know that you are all very appreciated.
That's awesome. What's up, Robin? I think I saw Dean uh, Blundell, if I'm saying that right. I think I saw him pop in here. If you're still in here, Dean, I seriously, dude, love your work. Like getting that info on Canada, all like just a huge fan, bro. Like, but yeah, no, honestly, man, it's not just Gen Z. It's not, and that's the thing is the youth. You're going like you're gonna get all this crap kind of put on you,
Yeah,
right? Where it's like you don't understand, you're lazy, you're not appreciative, blah blah blah. They said the same thing to us. We were called the slacker generation, so we were the original slacktivists, like we and but that a lot of it's because we were kind of raised feral. And the reason
yeah,
we were is because we were sort of the kids with mom and dads that were two parent household incomes, right?
yeah.
Like they had to do that. So we were the latchkey kids. We were the ones that, kind of had to come home and fend for ourselves, or you had friends and you ran around the neighborhood and just, like we were the generation where they had public service announcements. It's like it's 9 p.m. Do you know where your kids are?
Oh man, it's
Like it would
it's
come
it's
on the television. and it would say, it's this time. Do you know where your kids are?
It's
So
funny now being old enough to have seen the world change a little bit myself and how people my generation coddles kids even more than we were coddled. Like my dad would tell me stories about how at the camp down my street, my dad grew up in the same neighborhood that I now live in. He would tell me stories about how they would rock climb and just have so little safety precautions and each just roam the neighborhood. And for me, it was definitely a step removed from that. We had a lot of freedom. We spent a fair amount of time outside, but man, now the generation and two or two below us, we just, oh my God, did you hear that they heard this in class? I think I'm going to email my teacher.
by the time I was in fourth grade, um, I was riding my bike 3 miles to school. I was getting myself up to go to elementary school. I was getting myself up to go to elementary school by third grade. A bus would come by the house. You paid a dime to get in it. And so it was just like my dad's like, all right, set your clock. You like I knew what time I had to be on the bus, and I better have been on the bus. And that was it. And so, and then when we were about to move away from Hawaii and we sold our house, the government bought it. Because that back then they would just like if you were a high up federal employee, they'd just buy the house and then the government would sell it. And
Yeah.
then, they'd help you buy the next house. As part of your move package, which they did away with which was sad. But so we were living in a hotel in Honolulu, and in Kailua, you'd have to go across the mountain, so you go across the Pali. And I'm in fifth grade, and I'm like getting my sister who's in second grade, and we're taking a city bus, and I had two stops to make. So it's like I had to know the stops, and then like I got on the bus and we went across the Pali, and then I had to walk like a mile and a half in the city, you know, to the hotel. My parents didn't come pick me up. Like
Generational
I'm
differences.
going to the other side of the island of Oahu, on a bus. So and it was, but by that time, the summer before that, going into fifth grade, my parents were like, I had to be in when the street lights came on. That was a rule. Like street lights come on, you got to come back in the house.
It
My
never
parents.
stops being crazy to me that there was an entire world before even the most basic cell phones. Like
Yep.
that to me feels like such a necessity. Like really, how did people get by when they couldn't just send a phone call to your parents? Like, here's where I am.
Yeah, like I
Crazy.
was, you could, there was, you just kind like I ran around everywhere. It's a wonder I didn't get hit by a car. I almost did a couple times, but like I didn't end up in a hospital or something like that. And I think but yeah, going into fifth grade, my parents were like, "You can stay out till 9:30 at night." Like, so the summer between my fourth and fifth grade year, it was like you could stay out till 9:30 at night, and I would make myself breakfast. I'd hit the door by 8 o'clock, and I sometimes wouldn't come back until 9:30 at night. I might come back for like lunch, unless I could figure out a way to get some. And so like we'd figure out a way to get like if we had $1 or whatever, you could go to McDonald's in Kailua, and they had a pot of packet ramen that they had made, and it was a quarter, and they give you like a cup of it, so you could get like the coffee cup of ramen for a quarter, and we'd get that, and that would be lunch, you know, and we go wherever,
Wow.
like it, and our parents had like zero idea where we were all day. You know, we just kind of came. It's like, okay, see you, come home alive. That's about it, man.
Completely different world. Oh man.
Yeah, I remember
It's
encountering that when I was in grad school. I was an office manager, and you know, my boss came up to me and she's like, "Hey, you need to interview this young man for the student position." I said, "Okay." So I go out, and so I start talking to the guy, and his mother says, "Yeah, Bradley's here to interview for the job," and I'm like, "Okay." And I start to talk to him as like, "So what hours?" He didn't say anything to me. It was his mother, and I kept trying to talk to him, and she kept talking for him to me. And I remember it was the first time I'd interviewed like the helicopter parent millennial kind of thing, and because I'd worked in like aviation, or I'd done landscaping stuff, and
right.
that very blue collar work. I walked back into my boss. I said, "Yeah, don't hire that kid." And she's like, "Why? What's wrong with him?" I said, "He didn't say 2 words to me. His mother said everything to me, you know." And she's like, "Oh, that's normal." And I said, "So what'd you think of him?" I said, "I don't know. He didn't say anything to me. What am I supposed to think?" She's like, she's like, "Well, was his mom nice?" I said, "Sure. Well, we'll hire him." Okay.
It's sad how one of the things that we lose with technology is just the ability to be independent and just do the most basic things for ourselves. Even like there are so many capabilities that my parents' generation was just expected to have that now it's like I don't know. I'm just gonna ask Siri.
But that's kind of the so there's a give and take to that, and that's kind of
Yeah,
what's cool about it is, and this is where you're kind of having to develop different skill sets, right? Like when I started college and I started doing history, like you didn't like they had the internet was kind of in its infancy. So I would go to like if you wanted to look up an article on, like in a journal, an academic journal, they literally have like a printed set of it, and you would have to go get the abstract for that year, right? And you would look up articles. Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to read that one because I think it's germane to my research for this thing I'm doing. You'd go find the volume and pull it out. When JSTOR hit, now it's like they basically paywall it, which is sad. But like when it first
yeah,
hit, it wasn't paywalled. You could type in whatever historical topic, and then boom, there's all the articles. An insane, like you're like, what? What would have taken you an entire weekend, you could get in seconds.
yeah. Oh my God. I my
And
yeah, my
it's
parents literally whenever they had a debate they needed to solve, it's like, okay, let's pull out the encyclopedias. Let's get to the bottom of this. It's honestly one of the most impossible things for me to fathom that most of human existence up to this point just didn't have these tools at all. Like I am so hardwired to the ability to just anything I want to know, almost anywhere I am, I can know it quickly.
I remember when Skype came out, and I talked to a friend from online. She lived in Australia, and I thought that was mind blowing. That I'm literally talking to someone for free, which would have cost me an arm and a leg on an overseas phone for free. And it blew me away. I was like, "What?" And I mean, even things changed. Like when I went back to college and I was single, and I remember talking to she was about 6 years younger than me, a girl in my class. We kind of hit it off, and I got her number. I said, "Oh yeah, I'll call you." She's like, "Nah, you can text me." And I was like, "Huh?" Like she says, "Yeah, just go ahead and text me." I said, "Well, I can
Yeah.
call you. I don't mind to call you." And she says, "No, no, go ahead and text me." And I was like, "Okay, let me go ahead and get a cell phone." So I got a cell phone. It was a flip phone, and I was like, I literally was doing the old like I was like, "How the hell do you text?" Like, oh, okay. I had to figure out a text, and then and that's back when they had the shorthand, the K and the all the the like the OMG and all the stuff that came from
Right.
there. Because it's a pain in the ass. You had to hit all those buttons to get a letter, you know. So, like, what amazes me is just how much information is in. I mean, the fact that what we're talking on right now is just
Yeah.
like wow.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's
I
amazing. But then you got to guard against all this garbage
yeah.
that comes out.
Yeah,
Um,
when the internet came along, it was just the promise of this boundless knowledge haven, and now we get now you have to watch an ad if you want to learn about a war taking place.
right? Yeah,
It's
100%.
yeah,
Or you're not going to get like and the other part is you like what the institutions we used to have.
yeah,
Like corporate media are really essentially bought and paid for by the moneyed classes at this point. And the slant is it's not even kind of, well, let me put a thumb on the scale for that. It's just they're slapping their whole palm down.
yeah,
So now you're not even really get like at this point, like even Fox News, it's you're not even talking about reality at this point. We're not even like they're not at
yeah,
the far end of it. We're not even talking about real actual things, which
yeah.
is
The
kind of
fact
nuts.
the fact that we're all at the mercy of algorithms now and AI, it's something that could have never been anticipated. We opened up a real Pandora's box with the internet, and I don't wish it was gone, but I worry all the time about the consequences that we're dealing with as a result now. And yeah, going back to that FaceTime point, it's so interesting to me how as a kid we used to talk about how, oh, what if one day you could actually do what did you call it back when it was only on the computer? iChat, was it? What if you could do iChat on the phone? And then
Right.
one day it's here, it's out, everyone's doing it, and then the next day it's like, I think that I would rather just text. Actually, it takes us so little time for things to become mundane.
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of does. I remember when I've never had it, but I remember when Snapchat was all the rage. Like Snapchat popped up, and it was like, and that was kind of where I just said, "Nah, I'm gonna miss this fad." I was like, "I'm good," and it's like, um,
Yeah, I thought we would
but
have hoverboards by now too. I remember when I first saw my high school graduating class written on a banner. We were graduating elementary school, and they said the class of 2015, and I thought it was a typo. And I'm like, man, by then we're surely gonna have flying cars. But lo and behold, 2015 comes around, and nope, it's 2025, and we don't even have the Amazon drones delivering our packages yet. What gives? I
it's-
thought for sure we would have that by now.
no, no, we don't have the Amazon drones delivering our packages. Like I hesitate to like. I wonder, what the next iteration of tech is really going to be. I
Mm,
mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you'd have to get some kind of equilibrium with the moneyed class to actually get them to want to innovate. Because when you get to a lot of these billionaire status, like Bezos or whoever, the tendency is you don't want to innovate. You just want to
yeah,
maintain, like you just want to keep consolidating power and power and power. So like there's no reason to innovate at that point. You're at the top, right?
yeah,
Because
Yep.
part of the prime driver of
yeah,
innovation is, okay, well, I want to move, I want to keep going. Like, but
yeah,
if you don't need to, like, I mean, I don't know what AI is really going to bring. Um, I don't know. I've got friends that are in AI, and it does a lot of good things. But then, I've got other friends that are terrified of it. So, like, I'm like, you historically you see this with new technology, you know. Um, like it's funny because I think one of the things that like the changes in technology, like one of the things that made Hitler so popular and where he was able to host these big rallies was the loudspeaker. Like that was invented around his time, and that's where like he was able to hold, like he took advantage of that in the sense of holding these massive rallies. And so the like and then the motion picture and all that, like that kind of added to the Nazis and how they had this like, oh my god, they're unstoppable. Like, and you see, like that's why it's important now to sort of block that spectacle, because that's what helped the fascists seem like, oh, their takeover is inevitable.
yeah. I
It's
think
it,
one of the things that really worries me now in comparison to the past is that there is a cap to innovation, and we can't keep progressing indefinitely. And where we are right now with cell phones and AI, it feels like a pinnacle point to me. And it's hard for me to imagine much of a future of technology beyond this point. I don't know what we still have yet to achieve. And I worry that if we keep trying to, we are going to push ourselves off of a cliff.
I think I think like I agree with you in a large sense. I don't know if it's necessarily so much of a cliff. I think the issue that then becomes, so like the iChat or the reference you made, right?
Mhm.
Like I'll go back to texting. So does a technological innovation, because and this is a buddy of mine came up with this phrase, like for Democrats and just anything. What does this impact technology, political, whatever? Is it measurable and meaningful upon your life? Is it making your life better? Is it making your life better? And is it better, measurable, and meaningful? So, is AI going to make your life better in a measurable or meaningful way? If it's not, then it's gonna fade out. It's gonna become a niche product, right? It's gonna become a niche technology, just like Snapchat or any kind of other social media, right? Um, so whatever this technological innovations we come up with, is it measurable and meaningful? Does like so you could have EV and it could be amazing, but if it's not economically viable for your average, person in a society, then they're not going to use it. They're going to use, like, say, maybe dirty technology, right?
Yeah.
So that's and we're seeing that now. Where what used to be, oh my God, Jeff Bezos built a rocket, or this, oh, we're gonna, oh, or Elon's like, we're going to Mars. It's like, yeah, but we're suffering so much down here. I
Yeah.
can't look up there. I can't look to outer
Yeah.
space. So that's the balance of it. Is if we're not good at home, what good is it imagining going to Mars? You know,
Yeah,
like, I
it
don't
is pretty
care.
ridiculous sometimes to think about that prospect. At the same time, I am one of those people who is loftily holding out hopes for a Mars landing at some point in the future. It makes me sad sometimes to think how much money and energy we put into space exploration back when my parents were kids, and how the most logical trajectory of that was by now we probably we would be on Mars. Like if space exploration had remained 5% of the United States budget as it was in the 1960s, more than likely we would have colonies on Mars by now, and my generation would have had a space landing to celebrate, and or a Mars landing to celebrate rather. And yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah, it would. I mean,
But no, you're
and
totally right though. It's at the same time, like, yeah, we have much more pressing issues at home than we should probably fix the whole climate change issue before we start figuring out how we make other planets habitable.
well, I think it's a yes and question, because the
Yeah,
interesting thing is, like, with NASA, a lot of innovations were fueled by NASA. Miniaturization of computer chips, that's because of space exploration, was to get, you know computers used to be as big as a room, like a whole
yeah,
wall, but they had to miniaturize it, because it's like every gram that you put on that space shuttle is got a it's fighting with gravity, and that's more thrust and fuel that you've got to get it to break gravity and get into outer space. So the issue we have here is, like, we put our things, or we put our values and our focus in the wrong things, right? So instead of just, hey, rich people should be able to get as rich as they want, that's the goal, okay? Or, oh, we can't afford to do that, we can't afford this. It's like, well, we just need to change our priorities. Should billionaires get, like, the best tax breaks and the most and corporations the most tax subsidies? Or should we, like, fund USAID and, research, cancer, Alzheimer's, or, diseases in the world, and then also at the same time put 5% into the budget and go to Mars and maybe
yeah.
go further.
And the
You
notion of
know,
us spending more and more money on the military now, like, I wouldn't mind if we took a good 10% chunk out of the military and put that into space exploration personally.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
well, you get this notion of, well, like, Trump's talking about, he wants to raise the defense budget to a
Yeah, to a
trillion
trillion.
dollars to a trillion.
God,
It's
that's
already like
ridiculously big.
890 billion, and we're technically not even at war with anybody. Like, the generation war in Afghanistan is finally done, and we're not at war with anybody. It's like, okay, but we're still, like, and when you dig down into it, all that is just defense contractors. Which I thought the ironic thing for all the thing that Trump has been doing with pissing off the EU and Canada and everything else, I was like, and they started canceling American defense contracts, like for weapons and weapon systems and everything else. Oh, we're just going to build our own. I was like, wow, Trump might actually break the a military industrial complex in America. Yeah, like he might actually make that happen because he's made people so mad. So, but yeah, like we still, I think we still have the nuclear triad, which is
Yeah.
we can destroy the Soviet Union by land, sea, and air. And Barney Frank, who was a representative from Massachusetts, but he's retired now. He said, "Yeah, we can keep two. Can we get rid of one? Just one. We can still bomb the Soviet Union 10 times over if we need to, but can we get rid of one and maybe I don't know,
the,
fund
the
universal health care?"
the notion that we as human beings have enough nukes to destroy planet Earth many times over is so ridiculous to me. Like, how does one country, any country at all, accrue multiple nukes and then say, I think we need more than this? It's
Oh,
unthinkable.
it's just that it's that kind of go along to get along, right? I'm
Yeah.
not. Wait, it's that here's a contract. Let's like I'm gonna pay you because like we have a good relationship, right? As in, you're gonna build nukes. I'm gonna pay you government money. Oh, and then you're gonna kick back that to me in campaign funds. And then
Right.
I'm gonna make sure you keep getting contracts and we keep buying nukes. And then you keep kicking it back to me so I can keep getting elected and keep my job. Yeah, it's that very much a quid pro quo thing. And meanwhile, us who are like, wait, why do we have all these nukes and we can't have free school lunches for kids nationally?
Right. It's crazy.
Like, wait a minute. Like, our priorities are all messed up.
You can
What?
drone somebody anywhere on planet Earth, but people can't eat. It's
Right.
ridiculous.
Little kids have to. We got to charge them. Why?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like, or why can't? It's like, well, we can't have kids go to. We can't have young people go to college for free. Why? Like well, it costs too much. Well, no, not if we have a fair taxation system. It won't, and that will actually, in the long run, benefit American business because look at that. You have a very educated populace.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it doesn't have to be liberal arts or it could be trade school. It could be all those things, you know. But I mean that's what we set out to build even at the turn of the century is we built all these colleges. And for a long time we like even still like we're the in some ways we're the bastion of the the learned world. But Europe is might take that position from us now. And I mean it'll be to our own doing. University of
I read a
Wisconsin.
headline the other day about just how much our public schools were beginning to decline, and yeah, it's hard to imagine at this current rate that we're going to retain that title for very long.
University of Wisconsin, when I was coming before Scott Walker and the Koch brothers and what they did to Wisconsin. Because a lot of people don't know, like the Wisconsin idea, where sort of the progressive movement in America started in the 19th century, in the early part of the 20th century.
Mhm.
Wisconsin was the premier public university, University of Wisconsin, in history. I mean, you name it. Like it was just it top notch school. And then Scott Walker got in there on the Tea Party movement, which is before MAGA with Koch brothers, where they privatized like a lot of public works, which is the real insidious thing because a lot like that's kind of the push now with the billionaires is they want to all this tax money, our money that we've paid in for these public works, and then they get to come in and buy it up for pennies on the dollar, and then turn around and charge us exorbitant prices on stuff our tax dollars paid for. It's the ultimate grift, right? And so now Wisconsin still hasn't recovered from Scott Walker and
Yeah.
those Republicans and what they've done and now they're looking to do it nationally. And so it's that's where just mm, that's really where we're getting screwed because it's the things that were set aside for us by our grandparents, by like who fought for union membership, who fought for good public schools that used to be just across the board, for the most part, you know, uh, it's like they fought to keep minorities and women out of that system,
Yeah.
and eventually they started to get into it, and then people started losing their minds, and so it's just it's a legacy that was stolen from us essentially. It sucks, man.
Yeah.
And so like MAGA's, I understand the rage there, but they're mad at the wrong people, you know.
Yeah, I've been really concerned about my parents' social security recently. I would be pretty devastated if they lost that, and I do not trust Elon Musk's stewardship over that. It's
I think
scary.
Elon's going to be out soon,
Yeah.
but I think a lot
That's
of this stuff is means testing. Like the privatization, like they make no mistake, their goal is to privatize everything, anything that because the money that's separate for Social Security. Oh, Wall Street absolutely wants their hands on it. They want to put it in there so they can make even more money off of it. But then the question you got to ask yourself is, look at the way it's going. Do you want that Social Security money in there for them to screw it up? No, hell no. You know, or the VA and all the money that
yeah.
goes to the VA. They want to privatize that and then make healthcare worse, right? So it's the sleight of hand is like, oh, you can, like, they tried to raise the age for Social Security and people weren't having that.
Yeah.
So now it's the next move, and this will be key, is they'll keep it the same, but the outcomes will be worse. Because that's what they do. They do it like, you know, I'm waiting for cuts to VA benefits and Social Security. It's like, oh yeah, uh, we have a deficit. We got to make that up. So we're gonna have to cut Social Security nationwide by 10%. You know, it's like we're gonna have to cut veterans benefits, and pay by 15%, because we have a shortfall. Yeah, we have a shortfall because you gave the billionaires a tax cut. You know.
So many of these things that are happening right now are so unpopular that it really concerns me that Trump isn't even trying to get reelected, that he's just planning to stay in power indefinitely or just hand it over to whatever Republican is willing to take it. But yeah, my hopes of a future Democratic election taking place in 2028 at the moment aren't the highest. There are moments where I waver back and forth. It was very reassuring to see that judicial election the other day, and it's reassuring to see the level of corporate accountability that some of these people are facing. Because at the end of the day, bottom lines matter so much to these billionaires, and if the Tesla stock is tanking, that matters.
Oh, absolutely. And that's I think where, if I were to say for resistance that we can viably hit them, that's the place we can hit them. The
Yeah,
boycotts, the negative press, all that
yeah,
matters because, as we've seen, you can see a day-to-day almost correlation. You can see that red line of Tesla stock dropping.
yeah,
And like, whereas, a protest for trying to get movement on a bill or, some political relief, you don't really see that day to day. Oh, but you see it on the stock ticker. Oh, you see it there. And and that's the thing, if the Tesla protests have taught us anything, that can hurt. That can absolutely hurt. Hell, Canada did it on a macro level, where they based Canada, Japan, and China, where they said, let's go ahead and sell a chunk of these treasury bonds and see how it goes. And when the treasury bond yield started going like that, Trump said, "Oh man, I better pause these 9-day
yeah.
tariffs." That got his attention. And so the thing is, I don't think Elon's going to be there much longer if that Tesla stock price keeps dropping.
Yeah,
You know.
that's another thing with these billionaires. Some of their interests are so conflicting with one another that it didn't feel going in even like Musk and Trump could stay on the same side for very long because the
I
whole
can't.
electric vehicle thing is just such a conflicting interest with all that Trump represents. He's like one of the most notoriously anti-climate leaders that we've ever had, and meanwhile we've got this electric vehicle titan running our finances. It really is a bizarre discrepancy.
It's Elon Musk and Trump are sort of fascinating in a macabre way of the cognitive dissonance of people, right?
Yeah,
Where Elon Musk got rich partly from government contracts, but really what that started out was he was a darling of like environmentalism and the left. Like he was like, oh, the good billionaire. And
yeah.
then he got on Twitter and turned into a social media troll and went down that rabbit hole, which was probably already there in his personality makeup.
It is
And
crazy how much his public perception has changed in the last couple years. I think the smartest thing for him to do would be to step down as CEO of Tesla and just publicly dissociate from that company as much as possible. Still
but
profit if he wants to, but just put some other person as the head of that company because he is not helping right now.
they can't. And so it's interesting. Like when I was in AA and we go to leadership conferences and I got a chance to talk to like higher level executives. And there was an executive that moved over from AA to run United, or take like, and he took a guy with him in the same position, right?
Mhm.
And I was asked somebody, I said, why would you do that? Like, I don't get it. Like why it was like you're over here, but he says, and somebody said, because I think he took a drop in salary, and the package was this, and they said at a certain point when you have all this money, it's not about money anymore because you got everything you need. It's about ego.
Yeah.
If Elon has a billion or 200 billion, and this is the travesty about it. The difference between him having a billion and 200 billion for him is negligible.
Yeah.
It's digital bits on a screen. But the ego at seeing all those likes and reshares and being able to manipulate people like be the puppet master and just on social media, even if most of them are bots, right? It doesn't matter. That's what it's about. The problem with that is because he gets to live out his ego fantasy. There's there's millions of people that are going to die in the world because of what he did to USA, that are not going to get clean water, that are not going to get the food they need, they're not going to get the medicine they need. And you won't hear about that because they're not being shot. They're not being, they're being killed by just nature, from lack of food.
The ability
And
to not only buy influence and buy politicians, but buy an entire social media platform and change its algorithms to promote you and your allies, it's unthinkable. And people in the past just, man, our founding fathers could have never possibly anticipated we'd be dealing with something like
God,
this.
no. I mean, I couldn't anticipate this. And I'm not a founding father, but I'm gonna be so I talked with a friend of mine, Bob Seska, on Saturday, and he does the Bob Seska show. And after the 2012 election, where I organized for Obama, I set up a panel. Uh, I got him and his partner Ches Pazienza and Vanessa Valenti, Jessica Valenti's sister, when they did feministing. It was a blog, and a professor at our university, Professor Brown, in the technology department. And the panel was, social media's influence on politics. This was in 2012. And we cited, oh, Obama's team used Twitter to some effect. What will social media's, you know, effect be on politics? Little did I know with Cambridge Analytica and Russian propaganda in 2016 what we would get
I
wasn't
remember
even
feeling,
close to what I thought it might be.
yeah. I remember feeling like in 2012, 2013, man, this new standard where politicians have to uphold Twitter accounts is so bizarre, let alone a couple years down the road, and we've got someone who can weaponize it. I think one of the earliest political insights that I had as a kid was that Barack Obama wasn't really a leader who represented the country that I knew exactly. He was a leader that I could feel very proud of,
Hmm.
but he didn't really stand for the tweeting, fast food eating, American Idol glamorizing country that I knew. And I think that seeing Trump elected was the first time where I felt like, man, this leader represents us in the most disgusting way possible. But he does represent us.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and that's the thing that we have to reconcile with. Because you hear that a lot with with Trump. It's like it's like and Biden would say it, and it's good. It's a great political slogan. This is not who we are. Nah, it is, bro. And I learned that with Obama. I was one of these people. Like when he got elected, I for about maybe 20 minutes, I was like, we're post-racial. Look at how far we've come.
Yeah,
We've elected a black man whose name is like we were attacking, like we had the global war on terror, and now we have a president named Barack Hussein Obama. Look at us. And
just wait
then
until 10 suit gate.
yeah, then the backlash happened and the Tea Party movement. I was like, oh, we're not post-racial. Oh
Do,
wow.
do you remember? Do you remember 10 suit gate?
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
my God, the things that they created scandals of during his presidency are just unthinkable when you consider the things these same people would turn around and downplay 4 years later. It just,
The first one that
ugh.
didn't land was so there was a it was kind of a fluff piece where um early in his first term, because he was young and the press was just kind of gaga over him. And they had an order from Five Guys, and Five Guys was like it started in DC and it was just kind of starting to take off, you know. And it was the no frills burger place. And Obama apparently liked his burger with Dijon mustard on
Yes,
it.
I remember that. I remember that
Right, yeah,
mustard
and
gate.
not mayo or anything. Like it was just
Yeah.
Dijon mustard and dress, and it's like that he got labeled as like effete, and then there was the subtle anti-gay slur because of it, because he had Dijon mustard on a burger.
It was
And to
such a subtle
nowadays, you got
moment, too.
Jesse
People,
Waters going like attacking Biden with he drinks a milkshake, and that's not manly because you pursed your lips, like
right.
and
Yeah.
and and but that's the kind of crazy they have to live in where your masculinity gets smaller and smaller and smaller of what you can actually do because you've got these so-called alpha males that are like you know it's like well like I've seen videos where it's like you can't use a roller bag in the airport, a real man carries it. What?
Why?
Like, it's like
I
it's like women use the rollers. You if you're a man, you pick it up, and here's how you pick it up. You can't bend over at the waist. You gotta bend over like this. I'm like, what a horrible existence to live.
I started
Where
using this pop socket on my phone. It's that thing that like attaches onto the back, and they've got a bit of like a feminine reputation. But honestly,
really?
they phones have gotten heavier and heavier, and and they just help me. They help my wrist pain. Like as phones have gotten heavier and I've used it more, it's a useful thing to have. I live by that pop socket.
And there you go. And that's the worst. That is the thing that is so confining with this, and that's the one thing that I hate to see this with men because it bleeds over to oppressing women, right?
Yeah,
Where you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, and so your life ends up becoming confined, unfree, and miserable. So what do? You take that and you push that onto women, you push that onto gay folks,
yeah,
and it's like no, dude. It's like you want to use pop sock, man, go ahead, you know. Like okay, so you want to prevent like a wrist injury? Great.
exactly.
What's unmanly about that? So now you like, oh well, and that's what lead but then you go down that road, it leads you to you can't show affection to your wife, can't or girlfriend. You can't show affection to your daughter. You can't show affection to your friends, and you end up being cut off from the things that make you human, that make you really like life worth living.
And with this whole thing that where empathy is a vice and not an asset, it completely stems from that. Like it's impossible for me to imagine anybody thinking that that's a good thing to not be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. But it really is at the heart of the Republican mentality these days, or at least the MAGA mentality. I do try to make a point to distinguish because there is such thing as a sane Republican, but man,
I
it's hard for me to believe that there are sane people who voted for Trump after all that we've seen from him. I know that they exist. I know that there are some people who just gave in to the disinformation campaign, but it's it's
so
tough.
here's the struggle moving forward with that, right? Is it's not your job to convince or save these people from themselves. It's not. Your energy needs to go to what you need to do, your family, friends, and people that are going to need you.
Yeah.
However, in politics, you're looking for numbers, right? So one of the things I used when I was politically organizing, you know, um, I remember we had a talk about women's reproductive rights, that kind of stuff, and some guys I knew, they weren't necessarily broies, but they were just kind of they were like middle of the road. They never did consider this stuff, right? Invited them to the talk, and they were asking these questions, and some of them were a little bit over the line, but they never considered this stuff. And I remember some of the women were mad, and it's like, well, we should invite them, blah blah blah. I said, those are the guys that you need to reach because they said
Yeah.
they'd think about what you said. You could preach to the choir, and that's fine. But you got to go after, if you want to make a change in a democratic society, you got to go get the people that are gettable, you
Yeah,
know.
I think that's something that frustrates me so much about the democratic discourse I see. So many people are only preaching to the choir and don't even make the faintest attempt to reach out to somebody who might be on the other side of the aisle. And
We
it it's tough because there's a very deep cult mentality at play, and how you approach it isn't simple, but at the same time you can't just close the door to anybody who might be willing to listen. And in so much of the fuck Trump, he's a da 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 diatribes that I see, it just feels like you're only trying to make the divide worse and not trying to help things.
I get the anger is very real, and
Yeah.
and I totally get your point. And so, because there's a difference between like catharsis and rage and kind of self like that kind of stuff, and I understand that. But if you're trying to sway somebody, I think a lot of times where people run into it is like I have my set of beliefs, right? And so we might go down the list, and I might say, oh, I believe this, believe this, believe this, believe this. And here's where I'm at in that belief system. You are going to get people that don't necessarily agree with everything you got. And you can't push those people off. Not politically when you're forming coalitions. They might not believe anything you believe in except I can't stand Trump.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't stand Trump. Like I was on Joe Walsh's live. There's probably a lot Joe Walsh and I politically will not agree with, you know, but we do agree about the upholding the Constitution. We do agree about civil liberties, and we stand against Trump, and that's it. That's all I need, because that's what you're trying to get enough. That in political organizing, any kind of community building, you're just trying to get enough.
Yeah.
I need you to come with me just to hear. All I'm trying, like I used to tell folks when I was, coaching organizers and everything else, is you just want them to push the button for your guy. That's it. They don't have to go to church with you. They don't have to marry you. They don't have to hey, let's toast the beer to all the things we agree with. I just want you to push the button for our guy.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I want. Because then we can make a difference. We can start push it's about pushing the ball down the field. The analogy for democracy really is, especially in America, it's a tug of war. That's it. You just you need more bodies and more strength and more leverage on our side of the rope than their side of the rope. And that's it. And so you can't, like, there are going to be things that we all don't agree with, and that's fine, you know. But each of us has priorities and what's important, you know. For some people, it might be this, and the question is like, who are you voting for? Who's going to get you closer to your goal? You know, and there's no pure, like, standing on purity. Well, it's like, well, I didn't vote for anybody, because it's like, no, man. It's about who's going to get you closer, and harm reduction. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you're looking for.
Yeah,
You know.
it's such a shame to be reduced to the lesser of two evil arguments, but at the same time, I think that it's developed an unnecessary stigma around it. Like, why shouldn't we, in any given scenario, want the one that's less painful for all of us?
That's it. I mean, it's the thing is, like, you think about that in your life, you will always choose less pain, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
When you're driving
just
down the highway and you see one lane's moving a little faster than the other lane, what do? You get another. You
yeah.
go in the one that's moving a little faster. It
Right.
sucks. You're still in traffic, right? Or maybe you say, "Well, man, I'm not gonna be able to get on this exit about if I keep going. I got to get over here. It sucks, but it's gonna be less painful if I go
Yeah.
in a little early, merge early, and then instead of trying to merge late."
Eggs are
And
expensive, so let's try fascism.
right, right. And so, and the problem is a lot, like, one is the misinformation, but the other part of it is just the lack of accountability and responsibility for people. I liken it to, like, looking at democracy like customer service. I voted for you, so you should come and give me everything I want. And that's not how it works. Is like, you're just trying to move your sides, move what you care about down the field. And the way you do that is like pushing them. You constantly
Exactly.
following up with them and just saying, "Hey, man, if you guys, you gonna pass that bill, right? Oh yeah, we're working on it. No, you need to work faster. Come on,
Yeah,
let's go." And it's a pain. Nobody likes to do that, but you got to do it because that's part of it. You know.
exactly.
So yeah, man. Like, I mean, and if you do that, you've got like, that's the thing with, like, young folks, any folks. You got that, y'all. You have so much more power than you think you do. Huge, and no one's coming to save us. We're not going to elect a white knight. Pete Buttigieg is not going to be it. It's going to be us. If we really want that change and we really want that to stick, we got to advocate for it. We got to push for it and keep pushing. Even if it's just, hey, don't vote for that Save Act. Okay, well, I wasn't. All right, okay, but don't vote for it. I wasn't. I don't know. John Fetterman's thinking about it. I know he's thinking about it. Don't tell him to do it. Like, you better tell him not to. We're gonna get mad. And
Yeah,
so,
John Fetterman has really turned out to be a disappointment. Mm.
oh, that's right. Yeah, you're in Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
God,
Yeah.
yeah, dude. Well, I can't say anything. I got Lauren Boebert as a freaking congressional rep, so
We had such high hopes for Fetterman.
I too,
It's
man.
really interesting the 180 that he did. No one saw that coming. He seemed like one of the few outspoken voices for the left, and now he's like total sycophant for the right. It's bizarre.
I think it's a calculus on his part that
Yeah,
he wants to get reelected. And he's seeing Pennsylvania as going more red. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna kind of like straddle this fence over here. I think he's trying to be, God, I'm trying to remember his name, from West Virginia. That politic, like, he just retired. I can't remember his name off the hand. But if Mike's in here, he knows his name.
something that's been crossing my mind recently is that many of these politicians right now that are acting cowardly may have very likely fielded real death threats at this point, and I wouldn't put anything past Trump's administration. We did have that one judge that was executed not that long ago. We didn't really learn the details yet, and I don't want to jump to conspiracies, but There is very little that I think that Trump's administration is morally above, and if
Oh
this
yeah.
starts to devolve into a country where politicians need to be scared for their lives, I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're at that point already, where many of the Democratic congressmen, senators have fielded these threats,
Oh, I
are
think
scared for
so.
their family right now. Yeah,
Oh, I think so. I mean, Anthony Gonzalez, who was like, so the people that voted against or voted for Trump's impeachment after January 6th, some of them came out and talked about the death threats they got. Michael Fanone
yeah,
talks about it. Him and his mother got death threats.
yeah.
So did Harry
That's
Dunn. Liz Cheney laughs about it. I mean, but she's gotten them. Yeah, but Anthony, like a lot of those like almost all, I think every one of them that voted for that second Trump impeachment, they're gone now.
Thanks for stopping
Um,
by, Kate. Sorry, go on.
yeah, yeah, no worries, man. But yeah, like, and it was Joe Manchin. So thanks everybody who pointed that out. Manchin. I think that's what Fetterman's trying to position. But the problem
Yeah,
with that is like, I don't think Fetterman has the machine, uh, to be a Manchin type figure. Maybe I think that's what he's, trying to, you know, um, put himself in. Because Arlen Specter had a political machine. And that's a throwback to another era. Like Harry Reid had it in Nevada, Manchin had it, so did Robert Byrd. That's very much like machine politics from a bygone era. And now you don't really have that, you know. So I mean, you can build it, but it's, I don't know. Like Schumer and I think Kristen Gillibrand sort of have it.
yeah.
That's why realistically, unless there is a massive groundswell, um, for AOC in New York, she's probably not going to beat Schumer, in a primary. I hope she does. That would be dope.
Yeah.
But she would have to really get. I mean, maybe, like if she gets a lot of Bernie supporters, could happen in a primary. Because Schumer's like, he's kind of weak sauce, and he has been for a while. It's not a bad senator. He's just not a strong senator. You know. So, but yeah, Fetterman's a huge disappointment. It wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me if he had a very heavy contested primary. Yeah, and unless I don't know if your guys' primaries are open or not, if they're closed. I can't. I don't. I'm not sure on Pennsylvania. I mean, the only way that would help him is if he's open. But you know,
I'm pretty sure it is an open primary system. Yeah.
yeah, and that might be what he's banking on. Is he thinks he's gonna get enough Republicans to vote for him in the open primary, and so any challenger that comes, like he'll be okay with it. But even then, I don't think that they're going to vote for him. They won't vote for him in a general. They'll vote for the Republican.
Yeah.
So, and I think it might do is then depress Democratic turnout, or at least they'll skip the button for him. You know. So, I mean, nobody. That's the thing. Nobody really likes someone who's just mealy mouse. That nobody likes someone who's just kind of waffling and weak. We respect political leaders who are. That's why Trump gets, even though he's an idiot and unprincipled, he takes definitive stands, even though they contradict each other. But that's why
Yeah.
his supporters love him. It's like, oh yeah, look at him being all tough. He's so tough. It's like, no, he's just a blowhard. You know, anybody can be definitive and be a blowhard. You know. So yeah, but this is good stuff, man. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Like yeah, like I think things are. I'm curious to see what the Trump move. Yeah, you're in
Hi, Dana.
Dublin, Dana. She's like, I was wondering. I was like, why are you on this live? Aren't you in Dublin? Like,
Nice to
but
see you pop in.
yeah, yeah, no, but I don't know. I'm curious. Like the like the things that are coming out in the departments are not good, in the sense of not just the overreach and the constitutionality. It's like things are going to start breaking down. and that is about, you know, well, go to sleep, sleep well, and have a good trip. But I think about September, October is when all that's going to really start to kick in, and people are really going to start to feel it. And so
A
at that point, we'll see what's up. I
a
don't
lot
think
of
it's going.
the a lot of the sober hope that I have in things continuing to break and devolve is that Trump will completely break a system that's already broken and that allowed for him to take presidency to begin with. And my hope is that whatever future we have down the road is one where Trumps aren't allowed to take office to begin with. I don't exactly welcome whatever chaos would come in those intervening years, but I have a pretty strong belief that the system that allowed for Trump to take office is one that is so badly broken that it needs to be
Mhm.
replaced. And I do go very back and forth on this because to ask for different is to invite civil war. And I don't trust the leaders that we have right now to write a new constitution. But the writing just couldn't be more plainly on the walls that what we have is freaking broken. It's
We have to there has to be some kind of accountability to the people, whatever it is. And there has to be, and so, but in order for that to happen, we have to be engaged and involved. So that
yeah,
has to happen. Like, and I think you're going to see that. But whatever it is, it has to be meaningful, measurable. Impact has to be meaningful and measurable. It has to
yeah,
be. I don't care if it's socialism. I don't care if it's some form of mixed economy or whatever it is. Now, the good news is like, if we're going as history by a guide, fascist regimes don't last long. You know, yeah, I mean, there's some of the more famous ones that did a whole lot of damage, but even the smaller ones, man, they don't last long because they don't deliver. It's all for the person at the top
yeah.
and that little cadre, and it crashes because again they surround themselves with sycophants and not competent people because they're terrified of being ousted. You
Yeah,
know,
there's nothing about this current administration that screams sustainable. Like if he were an evil fascist, there are many people that he would have hired for the job instead of fucking Pete Hegseth.
and
Yeah.
really that was just so because now interestingly enough, Esper under Trump, all things considered, was actually a good Secretary of Defense. He tried, from all accounts, tried to make meaningful and measurable changes to the Department of Defense, which is the most Byzantine like department we have. With there's just so much fat and a lot of just stuff that we need to jettison. And he was trying to do that to make it more streamlined and more impactful. But the reason he got rid of Esper was because Esper stood against him. When
Yep.
he did that, when he went, so did General Mark Kelly, you know, and Trump couldn't have that, like his ego can't. So he was like, "I'll get Pete Hegseth,
Yeah.
dear God." And from all accounts that I'm hearing, like Pete Hegseth is just freaking lost at the DOD. Like
It's hard
he
to
is
imagine he wouldn't be. It's yeah, the lack of qualification there is just comical, man.
because so
It
the
would be
thing with
funnier if it weren't such a grave danger to the country.
so the thing with the Garcia thing came out today, right? So that was the gentleman that got shipped down to El Salvador.
Yep.
And so they went before the judge, and a lot of people were outraged because it's like, the judge is not throwing people in contempt, throwing them in jail. It's they're setting deadlines and this and that. And the thing that kept coming back though was they kept saying, "No one's communicated this with me," and so like, this is ridiculous. Like, how are you? Blah 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 blah. No, like, who? No one's talked to you. I don't think that's a dodge. I think that's true because the thing I'm hearing about Pam Bondi is the DOJ is an absolute mess. They are losing prosecutors left and right, and then they're firing other ones. And so because they're asking them to literally make frivolous claims in court that, and once Trump's out of office, they're going to get disbarred. So
Yeah.
they're leaving. Like it was the one I'm trying to remember, the one that said to no to Mel Gibson, Liz something, starts with a O. And Pam's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna restore his gun rights." She's like, "No," because she's over pardons. She's like, "No, I'm not." And so then she got fired, and then went and spoke to Adam Schiff on a shadow committee. And so for those of you who don't know what the difference is, so like um, you like there's the committees you see with like the Republicans are in charge now. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, God help us, she's over a committee. It's their stupid one, like the weaponization one or whatever. I think, or maybe she's over oversight, which is a powerful one. But then there's the shadow committee, and what that is it's on the record, but it doesn't have subpoena power. It doesn't have this other
Yeah.
stuff, and so you can go into like so Schiff is running that one. And so he's inviting people to basically speak on the congressional record. So it's on the record. And it takes a lot of courage to do that because again, as Ben pointed out, there's a lot of retaliation that's going on. And she and Liz, this woman, she talked about it, where they basically sent armed officers from the DOJ, probably U.S. Marshals, or to her house saying, "Yeah, you're not going to talk to Adam Schiff about this." And she wasn't home, right? They were trying to serve her, and that's real intimidation. And she went and did it. So she's a very brave woman, very brave, because like that's what this but here's the thing, everybody that capitulates to Trump, he punishes. Like the governor of New Jersey, who was kind of sucking up to Trump. Oh yeah, now his executive order saying he's a traitor, you know.
And
So
and all the kiss ass that his cabinet has to do these days. Did you see that that compilation of all the different praises that his cabinet
oh,
was doing? Oh my God, you're doing so great with
no.
the taxes, and his handling is just perfect. Da da da, and
Oh,
just the level of kiss ass that is demanded of them to remain part of this administration is just absurd.
it's so
But
awful. My
but
God.
but I could keep commiserating about politics all night probably, but I should probably call this talk for now. But we should definitely do this again in the future. This was great.
Yeah. Anytime you want to chat it up, man, let me know. I'm down.
All
I
right.
thank you for inviting me on, man. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Yep,
sir.
and thank you so much everybody for joining, and thank you as well for coming on. It's been great. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, afternoon, or whenever you are watching this, people. All right.
Thanks. Appreciate y'all.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.